Welcome to Palmetto Primetime with Sarah A. Ford and Mandy Powers Norrell, where every week they will be talking about social justice issues. And now, here's Sarah and Mandy.
So today's a big day for Palmetto Primetime.
I have been so excited about this day for a while now. I cannot wait.
I mean, my voice even went like almost Oprah because I'm so excited. I mean,
am too.
So we've got Dr. Kinsey who is joining us today.
I have been so excited about that since you first told me that he had agreed to do it, Sarah. I cannot even tell you. I've watched his entire testimony twice now. He's so good.
He is just the most delightful person, so kind, so humble, but so damn good at what he does.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
He's just wonderful. He really, really is.
And we're doing well on the podcast and the YouTube channel. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if y'all can help us out with that and, like and share and subscribe, and we're on Apple Podcasts now, if you'll give us a 5-star rating, because y'all, I know we're going to get some 1-stars in there from some haters, because politics. I was in politics a long time. I got some haters out there who let me ask you to help ratio those haters that are coming with the 5-star reviews. So like and subscribe and share and give us a 5-star rating if you can. We'd appreciate it so much.
We would definitely appreciate that, y'all, because we've enjoyed starting this process with talking about the Murdoch murders trial. And certainly we'll be talking about this, but there's so many other things that we want to talk about, things that affect people here in South Carolina and elsewhere, and really giving people hope, particularly victims and people that are looking for access to justice, because it is not easy. The process is not easy, and we want to draw as much attention to that and how we as individual people can work together to make that happen. So,
and it is amazing how much power you have as an individual. You feel like you don't, but in this day and age where you can talk to millions of people just by, clicking some buttons on your phone, you really do have power. And when we put that power together, we can make some real change for social justice in this world.
Well, that's what we're going to do. But first, we're going to talk to Dr. Kinsey.
I'm so excited. Stay tuned.
We were not telling a story, y'all. We're here. Dr. Kinsey is with us on Palmetto Primetime. Hey there.
Hello, ladies. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I am so excited about this.
I'm excited too. I've been looking forward to this. Sarah and I go back a long way, and I'm so honored that y'all asked me to join.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. I told Mandy, I said, I wonder, she says, do you think we can talk with Dr. Kinsey? I said, you know what? All we can do is ask. And we are just so thrilled that you're here. So we have so many questions for you, but let's just start off with my number one question. How the heck did you get so good at testifying?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Sarah, it's thanks to a lot of great prosecutors. And look, you learn this by walking out with your butt in your hand. And that has happened so many, many times. But just like with crime scene processing, you get better with your mistakes. And I was fortunate. It's probably unfortunate for some folks, but I was fortunate to always work in areas where there were a lot of violent crimes and a lot of prosecution. And I've had my behind kicked all over South Carolina by great defense attorneys. And by the way, you almost became a part of this case. I'll go ahead and tell you now, because I don't want to build up the mystery. But I had a stack of letters from prosecutors that I had helped with cases over the years. Yours was one of the ones at the top. So if they challenged me and I had to show them that I wasn't just pulling these numbers out of the air, your letter was in there. And I thank you for that.
Absolutely. No question. No question. Was so honored to have you, especially when we were, prosecuting cases in Orangeburg. Always felt so comfortable putting you on the stand. And I was so glad to see that the world got to see you testify the past, couple of weeks, because it's not easy doing what you do day in and day out.
It is not, but it was validation for me. My daughter is she's in her early 30s, and I've got a 15-year-old son, and when you miss these holidays and Thanksgivings and Christmas and birthdays, they think you're somewhere writing a report, or you may be manning a crime scene, security-wise. And now my friends and family who gave me up in those days, now they kind of get to see what it's all about. So it was validation for me. It was fun, and I always have a good time on the stand. And it was fun. I mean, it's a bad experience, but I like to speak to the victim. And it's not fun for me. I can't do it anymore, and I really enjoy doing it.
That's such a beautiful take to say that it was, validating for you, because so many of us, Sarah and I both practice law, and that has taken us away from our families and people who love us, and to know that they see it in a way of just knowing that you're doing something that helps the greater good and society. And you really, really brought that in these past several weeks. And so in terms of when you testify, you have this ability to explain really complex concepts in a way that anybody can understand. Do you think that is innate, or is it something that you've learned over time?
Well, Mandy, I'm just an old country boy. I feel as comfortable with a rod and reel in my hand or a shotgun as I do with a calculator and a protractor. But I can't, by the way, I can't program an alarm clock. So I depend on my wife and all those around me for these new conveniences. But I just like to relate to people, and I know how I learn, and I can't learn when it's on that level. So I don't like to challenge their intelligence. I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm doing it so they can understand also what all these educated men and women at both of these tables, because they all have law degrees, they all have higher degrees. And I just try to break it down because I like to please the public, and I really, really like to please those in the courtroom. But those 12 men and women in that jury box, that's who I'm trying to relate to.
Thank you. I wish more people thought about it that way. I think so often folks will talk above people's heads and just expect them to pretend to get it, but you really broke it down. And I think everybody in the country who watched this appreciated that.
Well, thank you. We've been doing it a long time. Like I said, Sarah has been out of the prosecution game for quite a while. And we've been doing this. I've been doing this for 22 years now, crime scene specifically and evidence. I've been testifying for 30 years, but I used to really fear it. And now I really look forward to it. But in Walterboro, I just felt the support, felt the strength. And if I was nervous, I didn't know it. But I'm just really, really appreciative.
Well, we didn't know it at all either. You seemed incredibly comfortable up there. So tell me, I noticed that I was down in Walterboro one day and I saw you while I was talking with some folks, and so you were there a good bit. What was your take on the vibe down there? You were there a lot, sitting with, the prosecutors, Creighton Waters and his team, who really put so much into this trial. What was your take from all that?
Is he frozen? Oh, here we go.
You're back.
Awesome.
I was just asking, I don't know if you heard me. You were down there for really a few weeks. I saw you down there, sitting with Creighton Waters and his team, Attorney General Wilson, who obviously did their reply testimony with you. Y'all made a great team, by the way.
Yes.
What was the vibe down there with the prosecution team as, building up to, your testimony and beyond?
the prosecution team is such an intense group, Sarah, and you being around me, that we have a level of intensity, but it's hit and miss. And it took a little while to get used to those men and women. They all have a certain skill set. One will be numbers and phone records. One is this, one is that. And they gel really, really well. But they are all business, from the legal assistant to the investigator, Ozzy, on up to Mr. Wilson. They're all business. And I was fortunate that Mr. Wilson and Creighton specifically told me, said, I need you here to help prep our guys. So I was also honored there. Here I'm helping attorneys prep for something that they know so much about. But it was easy, and he told me he didn't want to limit me. The sky was the limit. And I got to sat in the courtroom and study the witnesses and study the defense team. And I really believe that helped me at least come through with my part. But these men and women carried the ball for a long, long way, Sarah. And I don't believe the hype. Some of the stuff you've read, I have tried to stick to giving credit where credit's due. And I was so fortunate to be asked to help with this. I just took it a little bit over the line, but these men and women carried this burden for so long.
Absolutely. I mean, you know how it goes. I mean, from investigation to then it's, we're going to try this case in 3 months, 6 months, and then those weeks leading up to that, and then 6 weeks of trial. I mean, the intensity of that, my gosh.
Yeah, when Creighton called me the week before I prepped, so it was 2 weeks out, testimony the first time out. He said, I will call you. Please don't think I've forgotten about you. I will call you. Yada, yada, yada. I said, I'll hear from you in April. And he said, no, it's not going to be April. I said, well, you keep adding weeks to this trial, so it's probably going to be April, maybe early May. But we'll get to it. He said, no, I promise. And shortly thereafter, they made contact again.
Wow. I think the fact that you did listen to the testimony ahead of you, that you were in the courtroom and watching, I think that really came through in your testimony, because listening to other experts, you could tell that they had not had the benefit of seeing the whole picture the way that you had, because you were there listening to the other witnesses testify. I think that made a huge difference.
Thank you, and I agree, Mandy. I agree.
So let's talk.
Yes.
We have so many questions. Sorry, I don't want to go, Mandy. Go ahead.
You do it, Sarah, because I think you're about to go where I was. So,
well, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you got to this point in your career where you're testifying in a 6-week double homicide trial. When I was a baby prosecutor, you had just come back. You'd worked at SLED, but how did you get to this point?
Sarah, you're not going to believe this. And your audience is not going to believe it. But, when I was a shift deputy, long before I became an investigator, and we're talking about mid-90s, my shift went to a scene with a decomposing body. I don't think it was even a homicide or anything, a natural death. And I was the only one that didn't get sick. Everyone else is out here, delivering street pizza. And I'm standing up going, ooh, this smells bad. And the sheriff at the time come by, and he looked and he said, you're going to crime scene school. And I had worked some narcotics and, some other stuff. And I'm like, well, what is crime scene school? I mean, this was before Grissom. I mean, this was really before CSI. And I went, and it was such a progression. My first one was at SLED, and it was, I think, 4-week internship. And that rolled over into camera school. And I had great help with Chris Scott and George Weeks at the Academy, and Kerry McClary, and it's just so many heroes up there that took me by the hand and walked me through all the skill set, fingerprint schools, then chemicals, then this, then that. And I came back, and I still had to struggle for so long before the leadership here would let me work death scenes. It was, property crimes, and there's a certain amount of satisfaction in that, but that wasn't what I was trained for. And eventually I convinced them, if you'll give me a shot, I promise I will not, I may make mistakes, but I will not let you down. And it went from one piece of evidence to another, and every case would build and get a little bit better with the physical evidence. And my team around me, if I was weak at something, it's good to know who is strong, and you can put that person in there doing that task. And I like to say the men and women that I work with, because even though my title says chief deputy, I might be the one carrying the water bottles out there sometimes, or I might be the one cutting the crime scene takedown at the end. I enjoyed that part. But it built from there, and I was just fortunate when I went to SLED, and this breaks my heart, but my partner passed away at SLED, and we worked a primary-secondary team where when we responded, if I had primary on this one, 3 hours later, you might be in Seneca now. 3 hours later, you're headed to Beaufort. We worked everything in the state.
Oh,
And
wow.
he would be primary on the next one. Well, when he passed away, I got all his cases and all my cases, and then some before I went to SLED. And I've actually testified as a SLED agent, even though I've left SLED over 10 years ago. I've actually testified in a SLED capacity within a year of COVID. So these cases just kind of drag on, and you add more to them. But my late partner, he left here. He didn't have any say-so about it, but I kind of got stuck with what he and I had done together, and I was proud to do it.
Wow. That's, when you talk about how when you came upon the crime scene and it was a decomposing body and you're the only one who didn't get sick, it makes me think about the movie The Right Stuff, where they would put the astronaut candidates through all of the things that were designed to make, normal people very, very sick, and the ones who didn't got to train to be astronauts. So I guess you had the right stuff to be a crime scene.
Just at the moment, if that's what you want to call it.
So when you were a kid, when you were growing up, did you want to be what you are now, or did you have a different dream?
Mandy, my mother and father were both in law enforcement. My grandfather was a professional soldier, World War II in Korea. I really didn't have a choice. It was going to be on one side or the other. And I think I took my side, but there was no gray area for me. I'm the one that always worried about speeding and worried about being late for something. And I just always was taught to follow the rules, and I had a real good foundation, and I didn't have much choice. I had to change my last name if I would have chose any other direction, but I'm so happy that it worked out. And it's one of the few things I ever could do good, or people say I do good. So, I'm very appreciative for the opportunity.
It absolutely looks like a calling, like you have just completely fit your calling.
For sure.
I tell you, everybody laughs because the blogs and stuff were eating me up about an online degree and my PhD, but my undergraduate at Clemson, and then Troy, everybody thinks Troy was online. Troy was not online. I went to a satellite campus, but I went to class every Friday night, all day Saturday, and all day Sunday for over a year and a half to get my master's. But, some people were downing you because it's not an Ivy League degree and this, that, and the other. Look, if you can get that, go for it, and I'm your biggest supporter. But some of us have to work and raise families and pay bills and that kind of thing. But my first degree, I might want to mention, I had roommates and stuff that just totally kicked butt at Clemson University. I graduated, thank the Lordy, and I was happy when I was at that stage. I promised God I would never go back to school. And then sitting around 20-something years later, I was just playing on the computer, and I said, I wonder if I can get in grad school. That was a Tuesday. And just playing around, took the credit card out, paid the application fee. That Friday night, I was in my first class. So it gets better. So then, I don't know why a man almost 50 years old decides he's going to get a PhD. So I go and I said, well, let me see if I can get in once again. And I got in with some coworkers, and then they backed out. And I said, well, I've never quit anything in my life, so I'm going to go until things get rough, and I'll come up with a good enough excuse to quit. And then before I knew it, I'd made it through the prospectus, and I was doing my research, and now I'm like, I can't quit now. The world will think I'm a punk. So I had to finish.
Well, we're so glad that you didn't quit, because that in and of itself is a story for people to learn from, because you know everybody's got something to say about everybody, but you have the heart and the will to do what you've done, and it's been very clear that you have the passion and the knowledge to get the work done, and it's been wonderful to see. Um, so kind of in that same vein, I want to talk to you a little bit, because you brought it up when you were testifying, and we're going to get to a little bit of the testimony if you don't mind. But I want your dissertation is so timely. I mean, it really is in a time where, law enforcement is under so much pressure, a lot of it deservedly so. But your dissertation, can you tell us a little bit about that, and kind of how that came to be with your research?
Certainly, Sarah. I'm very, very passionate about this. We as law enforcement officers have made some bad, bad mistakes. You can't clean them up. You can't dress them up. We never thought we'd see a man choked to death on worldwide television. Here in our home state, we never thought we'd see a man shot in the back 7 times down in Charleston. We have really, really looked bad in some situations. Now, those are the terrible end of the spectrum, but then we've made some honest mistakes too, that bad training or just, the wrong person in the job. You've got specifically the African American community, and I don't blame them. They're jumpy. You've got other minority communities that are jumpy. Law enforcement ambush deaths are up 87% the last time I checked it. We're jumpy. And that's just a bad combination when you have crises or critical incidents out in public. So I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but I wanted to do something that would help bridge that gap. And I look at the way we train. We have academy instructors who are shielded from the public. And I know you've been there. I think you've probably done some legal work up there, or at least some lesson plans. Then you've got your department instructors, and I'm not saying they kiss butt, but that's somewhat of a political position. The boss has really got to like you to put you in charge of training. And then you've got your field training officers who are out here every day. They're in the trenches. They're getting cursed out. They're getting spit on. I wanted to see if the media's portrayal affected the way we present our training to our recruits and to our officers. Is it too hypervigilant? Or are they worried about death around every corner? Does that have something to do with our community policing efforts, why we're not extending that hand and trying to help the community more, or at least get to know the community more? And I wanted it to be quantitative, because I'm not a numbers person, but hopefully I would leave the door open for some youngster after me to do a qualitative study and sit down with these actual instructors and see if we can take it a little bit deeper. I think somebody said peel the onion. We could take a couple more layers off, and maybe we can answer some of these problems, because what I am sure of, most people are good. And putting us in 2 buckets because of skin color or culture, everyone is so wrong. We can go to communities here, and I can show you different cultures in every home. So we've got to be able to break past that barrier, and we've got to understand that we are from different cultures, many of us, but we're good people. We deal with the same knuckleheads over and over and over, and it's generational sometimes. Now, I'm not saying good parents don't have a bad child, and bad parents don't end up having a good child, but a lot of times, and you know this from prosecuting cases, you can watch it. The great-grandparents, the grandparents, the parents, and now you're dealing with the kids.
The frequent flyers.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something to help bridge that gap to show folks, because we've got over 700,000 men and women in this country that wear a badge and a gun, and just an average of 10 citizen contacts a day, that ends great. But we are constantly force-fed those 6 or 8 a year. We're force-fed those over and over and over again, and it doesn't truly represent those that are carrying the badge. And I just wanted to do something to bridge that gap. And I'm very, very passionate about that. I'm not a researcher. I'm a police that plays a researcher, but hopefully there's a real researcher out there that can take that and run with it, and maybe we can work our way out of this.
That's so important. And thank you for spearheading that work, because I think that it has implications that we need right now, and that will hopefully be far reaching for someone so many someones all over the country to pick up and run with. Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
doing that. And so I want to know, before we get into any evidence, like you deal with some really heavy things. And, even the people who we've been talking with who just watched the trial, they didn't see the things you saw. They didn't see the sealed evidence. And even I think even so many of us, it gets inside of you after a while. How do you take care of yourself? What do you do to decompress and to not let it weigh you the way that I think so many of us would?
Well, I'm sitting in it right now. My wife, she retired a year ago. She bought a big, nice camper, and we camp, spend a lot of family time. Like I said, I don't miss an opportunity to hunt and fish. I've got so many friends that I hunt and fish and enjoy the outdoors with, and that's the biggest. It's all about family time. I messed that up when I first started in this profession, and I promised myself I'm not going to do it. So sometimes when I have to go, I just have to take them with me.
I love that. I've always said, for me, it's always nature, because there's just something that, somebody asked me one time, they're like, what's the one thing you believe that people would think you're crazy for believing? And I would say, I believe that the earth speaks to me through my bare feet on the ground. Like, there is just something about nature. I can't explain why I believe that, but it's just, there's something really grounding about being out in nature. So I love hearing that.
I feel the same way, Mandy. That is so awesome. I feel the same way with mine as cornflakes in a can, if you understand what.
That it's true. I think for those of us that do the work that you do, Kenny and Mandy, and we hear about the worst of the worst pretty much all day, every day, it feels like. So you have to have that release and that outlet, and whether it's hunting and fishing or walking the earth in our bare feet, or I call it going to church at the lake, being on the water. It's just whatever works for you. Do you think that because you have such a good, speaking of grounded, but just a good grounding family and career and support system, does that make these times when you have to go away and testify, do you think that makes it easier? Surely it makes it more meaningful, but you're really making a huge difference for victims and their families who often can't speak for themselves.
Oh yes, and my family, they've known this before they were my family. They've known that this is me, and they have embraced that. And it's sometimes really not fair, but they've embraced it, and they don't know any other way. So when I mentioned earlier when we started that this was validation for me, now they understand it, because they didn't miss a second of the trial, and they're sitting there, channeling support. I can feel it. Like Mandy said, I can feel it. I could feel it in this trial. I never remember that before, but I could really feel it this time. And hopefully there's just some great things to come, and we can help. It doesn't have to be a brutal murder scene, but there are all kind of death scenes. Hopefully we can help some other families at least get some closure. And that's me. We need to. I'm a voice for the victims and those men and women that I work with. And I'm so fortunate that my boss and my command staff fill in the empty spaces while I'm gone, because that makes it all possible. And it doesn't have to be a bloody homicide scene. If I can help, I'm willing to try. And those that are around me, if you're going to be around me, you've got to be willing to try. So you can pick you can't pick your family, but you can pick your friends. And if they're not willing to help, the public and those in need, then I don't need them around me. And when I get to where I'm different than that, if I start feeling that way, I don't want to do this, or I don't want, then it's time for me to get out.
Ain't that the truth? So it was odd in this trial because you got to see everybody else testify. I mean, there was no sequestering of witnesses, so everybody got to see everything. What'd you think about that?
Sarah, you know, you can't fathom the money we were talking about. I cannot fathom losing my wife and one of my children in such a way. I don't know. I think we saw the worst of humanity, but we saw some of the best of humanity also. But you want to think there's no way I could be fooled by a person like that, because we're all pretty good judges of character. But it's just so unfortunate on so many different levels. I mean, I feel so sorry for the Murdoch family. I feel sorry for Miss Maggie Murdoch's family. Just what do you say? You can't fix it. I mean, I've seen some people that, in my opinion, pimp themselves in this trial. And that's the only way I know to say it. I'm not going to be specific, but they ought to have a sign hanging, I'll say anything for money. And I can't do that. And I told Creighton the first day I ever met him, I told him, I said, I'm not, and it's a bad word for a prostitute. I said, I'm not I said, and I'm going to say what I believe is right. I can be wrong, but I have to believe it's right. And he was so genuine and straightforward. He said, no, he said, I want you to be the canary in the coal mine. If it's bad, put it in the report. And so I felt a little bit of extra strength right there, because these men that have gone out and hired you that really don't know you. You know that they're putting faith in you already. And then some of the experts didn't have it all that wrong. They, like you said earlier, they only got a little bit. They got the appetizer, and you could kind of see them change on the stand. Some of them just flat out lied. And I couldn't live with that. I'd rather be an old country boy and just hunt and fish for a living, because if that's what it means to be successful, I'll never be there.
Thank you for that. I love how you said that. I rewatched your testimony today in the rebuttal case, and it was just so plain, as John Metters would say, it was real, and you can just know what's real. And you explained it so that everybody could understand what it could not have been, what could not have happened in the scene. And it made it very plain. And I think that the jury really appreciated that. I want to ask you about the two-shooter theory, because when I first heard about the shooting and that there were two guns used, immediately I thought, well, there are two people there who want them gone. And originally, logically, I was thinking, well, that's the thing that makes the most sense. Why do you think there were two, if you have an opinion, that there were two guns used?
Well, certainly, Mandy, in the testimony, when Paul, especially when his truck was out of commission, he always had a shotgun and a rifle, AR platform 300 rifle with him. So the weapons are there. That's the first thing that takes it out of my mind about two shooters. And it also tells me there's got to be somebody that would know that.
Yeah.
But the second thing is the lack of organization. I mean, this was a hectic, fluid, dynamic crime scene. I mean, this is not the way the mafia hits somebody. This is not the way drug gangs hit people. This was just totally amateur night. And two shooters would have cut half of that lack of organization. Two shooters would have made it so much better. It wouldn't have been all that running around. You probably would have delivered a lethal blow to Paul the first shot. And if you did them simultaneously, it really would have made it a lot more organized. So that, along with some of the forensic evidence and that kind of thing, I was pretty sure if there were multiple people involved, it was still only one shooter, in my opinion.
Thank you for explaining that.
So,
That's something.
Rifle, by the way, that rifle is. I mean, they had it right. The expert in Connecticut, he had it right. That is, I don't like the term assault rifle, but that is a patrol rifle platform, and it's what our men and women use, to defend our country. And it is so dependable, so lethal, even though it's an odd caliber. One person with that could have just caused so much carnage if they knew what they were doing. But then your flip side of it, you got your shotgun at night. You don't have to be that good a shot. And like I said on the stand, if it was nighttime and I was the perpetrator, I want that shotgun. But this was just not a person with a high skill set that committed these crimes.
That's interesting. Thank you.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, that some folks, started to say, well, maybe it was thinking that all this money that Alec had been stealing was going towards, trafficking drugs or people or something of that nature. And then, that this may have been a drug cartel hit. It didn't seem to be a whole lot of evidence. But I said, Mandy and I were talking, I said, this doesn't look like a drug hit to me at all. And of course, I'm not looking at any of the crime scene evidence, but just from what I knew about it, I said, this does not seem like that at all.
And he's kind of closed the door on that too when he testified.
Behind your ear, or either when you turn your ignition on, your ears start ringing. I mean, they don't do it this way. And most drug dealers know that if you kill your customer, you're never going to get paid. So that theory kind of started dying out since the Miami Vice days. I'm not saying the drug game doesn't cost lives, but generally speaking, if you're a good customer, like my buddy said, they'll work with you. You can give them something on it, and they won't hurt you, because they want their money.
Very good point.
So what do you say to people that have watched this trial, and, so many of us have been engaged with it. But, I think some of us fear that this also becomes a form of entertainment for people. And that's something that is really disheartening for me because of the work that I do and the work Mandy does and that you do. What do you say to people that think that perhaps?
It is really, really fortunate if it's being used as a form of entertainment, Sarah. And I look, a whole lot of people out there like me. And there's some people out there that don't like me. Whichever side of the coin you fall on, I earned it. And I'm good with that. But, some of my most negative comments have been the little snippets where I let those, I make people laugh. But I wanted to set that straight. That's not disrespect. And you probably know this, and Mandy probably knows this. That's me sending a message to that attorney. Please don't take it any farther, because then the judge is going to give me a chance to explain, and I'm probably going to take it a little bit further than you wanted me to. And it worked. It worked in this case because both attorneys are top shelf. Both defense attorneys, I have mad respect for them. But like with the urinalysis and the thing about the Baptist, sometimes attorneys call experts and or have people call them when they don't take the job. So you got to be real careful when you get a person on the stand. You start kicking them in the knee, and they may tell, as Paul Harvey said, the rest of the story. So all I'm doing is showing them that I do have teeth, but then I'm gonna go back to being nice, and that's the purpose for that. And it worked for me. But it's a sad state of affairs if this is looked at as entertainment, because, as I said, this is the worst of mankind. When, you have two people brutally murdered, and it's a family member that's convicted of that murder, it doesn't get any worse than that in my book. And I hope this is just a unique occasion, and I hope we don't go that way. I really do.
I agree. In our next segment, we have our feel good part, and we've already filmed that. And it's the young woman who crocheted dolls of the heroes of this trial. And she told us in that she was saying, and I'm telling a little bit about something our viewers won't have heard yet when this comes out, but that, people did question, why are you doing this? Because it was such a horrible trial, but she focused on the helpers, the way Mr. Rogers would say, look at the helpers. And I think she just finished crocheting a doll of you today, right?
They sent me a picture of it, and I'm just amazed. I am so amazed. I feel like G.I. Joe. I'm an
G.I. Joe, I love that. Crochet G.I. Joe. And she has your little dowel rod in your hand, which I thought was so cute.
The professor, yes, ma'am.
Very, absolutely on point. Well, some of the things that I keep seeing on Twitter, I mean, everyone wants to have a beer with you, Kenny. I mean, I think there was
I want to go fishing with you.
You want to go fishing. I think that it was, I just couldn't be more proud to know you and to have worked with you and to have you testify, because it really does good for folks to see that those of us that say y'all and we can do our jobs too. And you did a wonderful job testifying and really connecting with people, which is so important, even in the middle of a terrible trial. And so
you're not only an ambassador for victims, but you're an ambassador for the South, because I think so often people want to think of us as not as smart as people up north, and you crushed it. Everything you said made sense, and I, as a Southerner, I want to thank you for that, and independently of everything else.
Thank you, ladies, so much. I'm so humbled. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you being here. The one thing that we did not is preposterous, and absolutely not. I'm going to, every time I say those words, now I'm going to think Dr. Kenny Kinsey. And I think a lot of people will, because I know you've got to go, but that was just, I loved how that was just all right, that's enough. That's preposterous. Let me stop
you. Shut it down.
Thank you.
No, Sarah, I'm just generally, I try to be a nice guy. And no matter what they call me, I'm going to be nice to them. And I have been known to ask an attorney having a bad day if I can come down and give them a hug. And sometimes I will do that to break the ice, but I just want to show a little teeth just so they'll back off a little bit. And, the same question over 10 or 12 times, I start to get a little heated, and I'm going to throw something out there just to give them a little warning. And I'm glad they took the warning, because really they would have called my bluff, because I will not get nasty with anyone in front of those men and women in that jury box.
Absolutely, especially giving up their lives for 6 weeks to
be
there.
Incredible, Sarah. Yeah, I can't even, I don't know these folks, and I don't know their financial status or their work. I don't know what I would do for 6 weeks for like $20 a day. I've got so much respect for them. They'll never understand how much I respect them.
Absolutely. Well, I know that they were so happy that they got to meet with you. I guess that was last Friday, that they all came to meet with you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, certainly. It ripped my heart out. I mean, look, I'm John Wayne. Usually I am John Wayne. I left out of it with tears running down my face.
Oh my gosh.
One of the security officers down there, who's a lieutenant, and I've gotten to be quite good friends with him. He runs a regular shift, but during big trials, he has to come in and work the courthouse. And he said, "Look, I want to ask you something." I said, "Yes, sir, Lieutenant." And he said, "The jury wants to meet you." And I said, "Well, the judge released the jury yesterday." He said, "No, they're back." And I didn't count. I don't think it was a whole dozen, but it was a room full. And I went in there, and they thanked me. And y'all, I got choked up. I couldn't hardly I couldn't hardly talk back to him, and I'm like, no, you don't owe me anything because you are the heroes here. I need to thank you because you have done what you were supposed to do as a citizen, and you've met your obligation, and they are rock stars to me. They are absolute rock stars.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Kinsey, thank you so much for being here and just chatting with us a little bit about you testifying and just getting to know you a little bit more, because I know folks have just been so excited that now you're on Twitter. So make sure that you follow Dr. Kenny Kinsey on Twitter. And you've given us so much hope, not only for this trial, but with other trials, for other victims and other families as they search for justice for their families. So thank you for all you do.
Sarah, thank you, Mandy. I am gonna thank you so much. I'm gonna keep you informed because I've got to speak with about 4 or 5 attorneys in this upcoming week, and I'm going to keep you up to date. Hopefully, we'll have something real interesting real soon. We can try to help another family if we can. Oh, pollen is killing me. But I just want to, if I can I do a shout out, please?
Of course.
Yes.
Thank you, Walterboro, Colleton County Sheriff's Office, all the men and women around that courthouse, whether you're a clerk, whether you're security. Thank you for making me feel at home. And maybe, I've got a couple secondary homes now. Not that I have a state or anything, but I got a bunch of places that I call home. Walterboro is now the spot. And they were so kind to me, so nice to me. And that is a great group of men and women. Thank you to my folks here in Orangeburg, because without you, I couldn't have taken all these weeks off. As you notice, Leroy Ravenel, my sheriff, was sitting in the front row. He was there just to support me. You don't know what that means, guys. Great attorneys out there, the ones that like me, the ones that don't, the ones that have tore my butt up, the ones that have helped me. Thank you so much for making me who I am, right, wrong, or indifferent. I appreciate you. May God bless all of you, and please stay safe.
God bless you,
God
Dr.
bless
Kenny
you.
Kinsey.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow. He was so good.
He's just the nicest man. He really, really is.
I
I mean,
just the fact that he would come on our show, it just makes my heart sing.
right? And I mean, he's asking us if he can give shout outs. Are you kidding me? Like, take the mic, whatever you
He
want
can
to
do
talk
anything he
about.
wants to do. I mean, just anything. Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
thankful for him in so many ways.
It just, I love his perspective on so many things about, uh, there are people that are going to love you and there are people that are going to hate you. And maybe, it's true either way, perhaps, but you just got to keep doing the best you can. And he has such a good attitude, and he's just really, for those of us that are, in the legal field and in, pursuing justice for our clients or victims, it really gives me hope that we have someone like Dr. Kenny Kinsey on the ground doing the work.
Me too.
It just makes me.
I wish we could clone him and have a Kenny Kinsey in every single jurisdiction. And I hope it gives other people hope who aspire to do the things that he does, because he keeps saying, I'm just a country boy, but look where the country boy has gone. And I just gotta think that this is inspiring other people who may not think of themselves as potential national figures on the scene of social justice, and can help propel them and give them the confidence to go forward as well. He's so inspirational.
You just never know where you're going to end up. And we're so glad that Dr. Kenny Kinsey decided to spend a little bit of time with us, telling us about himself and how he's related to all of us. So,
yes.
And speaking of cloning.
Yes, cloning.
It's kind of like cloning Dr. Kinsey.
Yes. He said, I feel like I have a GI, like I'm a GI Joe now, because Our next guest is Stephanie Jonas, who has made crochet dolls of some of the heroes in this trial, and she is delightful in her own right. She finished her Dr. Kinsey doll just a few minutes before appearing with us today, and he got to see it. So I can't wait for y'all to meet Stephanie Jonas.
You're gonna love it. All right, well, stay tuned, y'all. We'll be right back.
So for our first feel-good segment of the podcast, I'm so excited that we have Stephanie Jonas in the midst of a double homicide trial with horrible facts that were emotionally confusing to so much of the nation. Stephanie focused on the heroes, and she started crocheting dolls that look amazingly like some of the heroes in this trial, including prosecutor Creighton Waters, Judge Newman, Bubba and his chicken, and now Dr. Kinsey, who was our first guest on the show. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
so
you
glad you're here with us.
I'm glad to be here.
Can you tell us, how'd you get the idea to do this? What inspired you?
It was just kind of a crazy thing that I have crazy ideas, as anybody that knows me will tell you. But it was just, I wanted to attempt to make a human figure doll in this crochet style, and I'd never tried to make one before. And as I sat down to try to make one, I was trying to decide who, and it just, Creighton Waters just popped in my mind because, like everybody else, I think in South Carolina, I've been kind of focused on the trial for the past 6 weeks. So he just popped into my head, and I just started crocheting.
So you'd never made a doll before you made the Creighton Waters doll?
No, he was my first one.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It looks so much like him. Do you have the dolls that you can show the people who are watching on YouTube?
I do. They're back here.
Oh my gosh.
Here's Creighton. And they're a lot larger than I think people think they are.
I thought they were little. I thought they were about.
My sister actually came by one day in the afternoon, and she said, they're really big. I didn't realize they were as big as they are, but they're good sized dolls. Oh goodness, there's Ellie. That's my sheepadoodle. I thought she would be quiet if she was in here with me, but she's not.
How long does it take you to make one of these?
Creighton took probably maybe 12 hours.
Wow.
Judge Newman, sit Creighton down and pick Judge Newman up. Bubba just hit the floor. Judge Newman took a little longer. He was probably 13 to 15 hours because of his robe. His robe was a lot more crocheting than just Creighton's suit jacket was.
Oh my gosh.
How long have you been crocheting?
I started in high school when my mom taught me. She taught me when I was probably 16. She taught me the stitches and how to read a pattern. And I've just made hats, blankets, scarves, things like that, really.
And now these most amazing dolls.
And this is Dr. Kinsey.
Yes, this is my Dr. Kinsey doll, which I just before I got on, I saw that Dr. Kinsey had seen him on Twitter and retweeted him. So I thought that was fun.
That's so sweet. I love that he has his dowel stick.
Well, he needs that, and not one of those fancy fiberglass ones either.
Right.
So he's fine with this one.
Because you have these details, so because it's so obvious you watched all the testimony.
I did, almost obsessively. I was very focused on hearing everything. I wanted to just make sure that what I felt was what was actually going on. So,
yeah. Do you have plans to make more dolls, or what are your plans with your judicial hero crew that you've got there?
I don't know. I thought I was finished with just Judge Newman and Creighton Waters. I thought I was done, and then I just felt like making Dr. Kinsey. I've had some requests, some personal requests from some other folks, both related to and not related to this trial process. So I don't know, wherever my hook takes me.
Oh, I love that. Have you heard, other than Dr. Kinsey, have you heard from the people that you have crocheted?
Just yesterday, after Creighton Waters joined us in the Twitterverse,
Yes.
he tweeted underneath my the picture that I put up Thursday night with Creighton and I crocheted him a little guitar. And he said that was a nice touch. He tweeted that yesterday.
I remember seeing that. And you also have Bubba and his chicken. He
I
fell
do.
on the floor.
Bubba just fell in the floor. Here's Bubba.
Oh,
Like Mr. Metter said, thank God for Bubba.
yes. And the chicken.
And his little chicken. That one fell down. Thank you. This little chicken.
That is so sweet.
Well, this is just such a breath of fresh air when, we've been watching for the past 6 weeks, just the most tragic circumstances and seeing it play out. But you've taken something that you are obviously incredibly gifted at. And for the first time, just creating this and just bringing people just a little bit of joy to see this in the midst of this trial. I've every time that you've posted them, there's another one. So excited. So thank you for sharing that with us and with the world, because you are incredibly talented, and it really has brought a smile to a lot of people, for sure.
I'm glad. I think it was just a little bit of a release for me as well, because it was listening to the trial and listening to the testimony every day. It got heavy after a while, and I realized it's just like this is heavy. This is weighing. So it just to do something a little more lighthearted, not to make light of the situation at all, but just to kind of give a little honor to the people that were out there fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
That was
It
important.
reminds me of Fred Rogers when horrible things would happen and he would say, focus on the helpers.
Yes.
And that's what you've done. You focus on the helpers.
These men of yarn are definitely the helpers. I think I had somebody earlier request, like, where's Dr. Reamer? We need a woman in the mix, because the women in the trial were so powerful. Everyone that spoke was just such a powerful witness. So
true.
Maybe we'll add some women to my Justice League of Yarn.
Justice League of Yarn.
I love it.
I would love to see it grow and keep doing that and keep sharing that. We're so glad to have.
Thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie.
Well, y'all are welcome. Thank you for having me. I never really thought that anybody would even see these. I had very few Twitter followers and used Twitter just to check Carolina scores and see what was going on in the news. And this thing has sort of exploded. I have a lot of people asking me lots of questions and wanting lots of dolls, and it's just a hobby. I'm not trying to sell them or make any money. I'm just
because you have a job, right?
Because I do have a full-time job that takes a lot of energy.
Yes. So, and you're a teacher, right?
Yeah. Elementary school music.
Sweet. I know. I think it would probably just be so awesome to be a student of yours, because you have such light and love coming from you.
I hope so for all my kids. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I hope they feel that way.
Thank you so much for being on our show. We appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Oh my goodness, what a sweet first show we've had with guests. This has just been delightful.
I love these guests.
I do too. I do. We've set the bar pretty high, but I know, but we'll meet the challenge next time too.
We will. It's so nice too, because we've been talking about just horrific things the past few weeks with the Murdaugh trial, but then to pull these two wonderful people, Dr. Kenny Kinsey and Stephanie Jonas, and to talk with them just one-on-one, it makes you, like Dr. Kenny said, you believe that people are good, and it's refreshing. It's so refreshing. So
and we want to ask you good people for your help as well. Yes. We're close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and when we get there, we'll be easier to search and find, and and reach more folks for the cause of social justice. So if you can like and subscribe, and we're on Apple Podcasts and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Everywhere. I didn't even know there were that many places for podcasts. But
I didn't
apparently,
either.
I mean, few are, if you listen, they're there. We're there.
And so many places to give a 5-star review.
Yes,
So please give
do.
us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. And we want to thank you again so much. Y'all have been so wonderful to us.
Thank y'all for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you next time on Palmetto Primetime.
We look forward to producing podcasts weekly. And if you have any topic ideas, please feel free to contact us on social media at Palm Primetime on Instagram and Twitter. You can find Palmetto Primetime on any platform you listen to your favorite podcast, so be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay connected, and give us a 5-star review if you like what you're hearing. Thanks so much for listening.